This is Quarantine Talk. It's a show where people around the world comes together to discuss life under the pandemic. This week, our topic is national lockdowns. We featured speakers from Spain, Italy, and Brazil. The following show is recorded on April 4th, 2020. Enjoy! Welcome everybody to the April 4th edition of our Quarantine Talk. This is our second episode so far. Today we'll be talking about our quarantine experience. We have three guests all around the world. Just in case you don't know, my name is Jerry Chen. I'm your host. I'm coming live from Taiwan. How about you, Alex?
Hi, Alex, and I'm from Spain, Madrid, more concretely.
Carly?
Hi, I'm Carly. I'm from Italy, Rome.
Junior?
Hi everyone, my name is Junior and I'm calling from Brazil.
Thank you everybody for coming. The first segment of our podcast today will be discussing about the latest news from our respective countries. The first thing we will do is all of us will talk about the news bulletin of our country. So I'll start first. So the first news of the business was, according to the latest update from CDC, Taiwan Center for Disease Control, our current number of infection are 355 confirmed cases, and we have 304 are imported cases and 51 are local. Out of the confirmed cases, there were 5 deaths. Just for some information, since last week, we have 2 more deaths. There were a total of 5 new cases today. The second news will be the news announced on Wednesday. Our President Tsai has announced that Taiwan will be donating 10 million face masks to around the world affected by the corona disease. Due to this effort to boost face mask production, the president says Taiwan has been transformed into the second biggest producer of surgical mask, and is now able to provide enough domestic use, adding that the government is aiming to increase daily production still further to 15 million units. This act came in the wake of a mask ban, export ban, started from January 24th to February 23rd. The ban was seen as a successful way of rationing sufficient face masks for the public as COVID-19 expands. This large donation announced on Wednesday is part of the mass diplomacy the current administration is pushing to solidify our relationships with allies around the world via providing medical supplies. The donation was well received by international communities. As a EU official said, we welcome solidarity of Matt's proposal while acknowledging that Chinese sensitivities are obviously involved. And that is news from Taiwan so far. Back to you, Alex.
Okay, so currently here it's 2:07. So I've got 2 news and a quick video that I want to show just because I find it funny, but it's terrible. It is terrible. For now, we have 124,736 confirmed cases. 7,000 of those happened in the last 24 hours. These are approximate numbers because they keep rising. 11,744 deaths with a little decrease, slight decrease. We had 809 deaths just yesterday. And then around 30,500 recoveries in coronavirus, which is not good because the numbers keep rising, but the recoveries are rising very slowly. Today in the news, we have that our government, our president has announced further. We're having our quarantine is gonna be longer than expected. It's now gonna last until the 26th of April, when it was initially meant to finish on the 20th of March, then the 11th of April. So now they're extending it for 15 more days. Furthermore, Turkey requisitioned, I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce this word, 150 inhalers slash respirators. I don't know what the exact translation would be, but it's basically the machine that helps you breathe, especially with pneumonia, which were making on their way to Spain. And they did this and to treat the Turkish population. So the equipment was being made in Turkey. It was ordered in Spain with the equipment brought from China. So Spain brought equipment, took it to Turkey. Now the equipment is being used for inhalers, respirators, and it's supposed to make its way, but Turkey's retaining the respirators. This is worth around 3 million euros, and the Minister of the Exterior, González Laya, has declared that there was nothing else she could do and that we got this far. So she's basically given up on negotiations to get this equipment back. But it's not the first time that something like this happens, which I'm surprised this news has not made it into the mainstream. But something like this happened last month, in France, when 4 million masks were coming from Sweden to Italy and Spain, and they were retained in Paris for 15 days. I see Carly is nodding, and maybe she wants to add something soon.
Yeah, so many of those cases get reported here where people would just be detain materials. So it's quite normal here. Every day you hear stories like that because of other countries that just do not want to release them for.
Yeah. And yesterday a man was, I find this ridiculous, but it's quite serious. Yesterday a man was detained after he escaped from a hospital after being tested positive for COVID-19. But he wasn't just running away. He went to his apartment, got 2 katanas, went back to the street shirtless, screaming, I'm gonna kill you all, and the police is going to kill me. Let everyone know I am a god. And I've got a video of that. If Jerry allows me to play it, I will. Okay, so there's 2 parts, but I'm just gonna play one.
Whoa. Whoa.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, the amount of policemen. So many
It's
people.
crazy. So people are asking, like, the people who are filming the video are basically asking themselves, how are they gonna, get him if he has 2 katanas, and he has tested positive for coronavirus. I'm gonna stop sharing now. They finally detained him, and the video has spurred a lot of controversies because they are talking about a lot of police brutality, and it is true there's a lot of police brutality right now that people aren't talking about. Mm-hmm. I personally don't think this was the case because their last resort, and you can see the police were using it as last resort. They throw the plastic balls for like manifestations and stuff. So they had to use that to break him down, and they were kicking him with the bars. It is true that there were like 10 policemen kicking him down, mm-hmm. and the guy would not drop the katanas, which I get why people might think it's excessive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what happened. It's crazy.
I think every nation is going through something similar right now. Like in Taiwan, there's a case of a guy returning back from a foreign country. He's supposed to quarantine for 14 days, but he escaped his house. So normally the government will track your phone to keep track, but he left his phone back home. So he just sort of sneaked out, and he went to an arcade, I think, like an arcade shop where people play video games. And then when the government discovered he went out, they sent in people in hazmat suits, literally the whole suit, to go arrest him, to like literally capture him. And when people saw like people in the hazmat suit coming in to like grab this guy, everybody freaked out. So, and that's like the kind of situation going right now. Like, government's being quite strict, and they'll they'll give out really heavy fines, and also possibly they'll quite possibly lock you up for a little bit of time, not in jail. They'll lock you up in confinement spaces, sort of hospitals for the remainder of the time. So, Carly, what about you?
So it's 2:15 now. In Rome, Italy. So we have around 120,000 cases right now, and although we've reached this thing called plateau, where it's not rising as sharply anymore. So it's like it stabilized itself kind of. So now we're waiting to go down, and like we've been on lockdown for 3 weeks, so now they are starting to think of the ways that they can implement so that we can kind of start having a normal life again, like not a normal life, but going back to reality, because this can't last forever. So basically now, the news that I was reading are of this epidemiologist who suggested that we should start wearing face masks at home, because they have been seeing that a lot of the cases happen within like home facilities. And of course, apparently, if you are at home with someone who got infected, the chances of getting it are 87% higher than, well, if you weren't at home with this person, if you weren't living with this person. But I've seen also in the news there's a lot of like no one really knows how to get back to a normal life without like seeing an increase in like new infections. So some people say that we should all start testing like people to check antibodies, especially because there's been this one study they've done where they realized that the number of people who are potentially infected are like could be and are much higher than the actual number that has been reported. So, for example, like one of the main places where the infection started in Italy has been analyzed, and there are 10 times as many infections than the number. And also, for example, the infection was present in the population in the second week of January, which tells us a lot. And so it's been like a really long time, even before like the lockdown of Wuhan happened, that the infection was in Italy, in fact. So that's very interesting. But also, yeah, so they're thinking, some people think that as some people have, we have reached like a good level of herd immunity. The communes with higher herd immunity should start first to like be like start working and resuming their normal life. But other people think that actually it should be in the communities where it's not circulating as much, because there are higher chances of it being it disappearing more, I guess, and lower chances of contagion. So yeah, there is that. And also I've heard that where I'm from, Rome, where the situation is pretty much contained, I would say, compared to other parts of Italy, they want to start testing the homeless people, because they fear that that could be a very big place where there could be a lot of infections and stuff like that. So that's all I've got pretty much. But generally, like all the news are very confused, and I guess we've reached a point where we don't really know, because we don't really have like examples to follow. So it's very hard. It's going to be very hard to find a way to resume to like a kind of like normal life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, of course. Like every country is struggling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, King Carly. Now to you, Junior.
Sure. First, I wanna make a disclaimer. I am sick, but I'm sick with allergies, so you're gonna see me with my red nose and my voice is a little bit different. And I'm on my 10th day of my quarantine, so I just have 4 more days, and then I can go back home. I just came back from the U.S., so I was doing a master's in education in the U.S. I was finishing. I was in my second year and had to evacuate my campus and go back to Brazil. And before coming back to my home, I had to like rent an Airbnb so I can do my quarantine here, and then I can go back home. So before I share with you guys the news in Brazil right now, and especially like the amount of cases we have, I think I have to give a little bit of background of what has been happening for the last week. So Brazil was kind of like in a denial of the problematic and how dangerous the virus was, mainly because our president Jair Bolsonaro is pretty much copying Donald Trump. Statements that coronavirus was not a big thing and it was just a cold and a flu. Everybody would um, pass for that in a very easy way, and the country would not get affected. So he's. I don't know how much we're talking about politics and how much we can get into that, but my president has this terrible characteristic of copying the US and copying Trump pretty much. So that was Trump's statements over the last like 1 month, denying that this was a big thing, and then my president was pretty much doing the same. But then we are now in a moment of political crisis because the Minister of Health in Brazil has a completely different approach because he's a doctor. So then he started into a clash with the president going into the news and say, "Oh, just go back to normal. You don't need to isolate. You don't need to be in quarantine because it's not a big thing." And then the Minister of Health, like the highest person in the country that talks about health, saying completely the opposite, that no, we have to isolate. It's the only thing that we can do right now to stop the spread. And the whole country is talking about that because little by little, the president was pretty much forced to change his position, the same as Trump, because now Trump is saying that isolation is positive, but in the past he was pretty much saying America is not going to even get many cases, and now we see how America is doing. And I think Brazil is in a process of getting there. We have a very a reasonably good health system, public health system, similar to the NHS in UK. So we have free health system for everyone, and the private health system as well. The main problem is that our health system doesn't attend the whole population because we have so many people, over 200 million people living in Brazil. So it's a lot of people. Um, and then what the government is doing, what the government did the whole week, was starting to prepare these emergency hospitals to attend the big demand that we're going to have. We don't have a lot of cases confirmed right now, so not a lot. Well, we have a lot, but not a lot compared to other countries. But right now, Brazil has over 9,000 confirmed cases, and we have above 350 deaths so far. But we have a big problem here, which I'm kind of similar to what's happening in Japan as well. With the cases are not very high because we don't have test results. So Brazil it's suffering a lot with that. Right now, to give you an idea, we have around 20,000 people waiting for test results for more than 10 days. So then we might have over 30,000 positive cases, but we don't know because our testing system is not efficient. So people don't actually know, and even people that are now having the symptoms or are now having a family member that have a case or something like that, they can really not get tested. There's not enough tests, and then when we get tested, it might take 10 to 20 days until we get the results. So then the numbers of Brazil are not alarming and are like very concerning because they're not real. So unless you really know how the situation is, you understand that this is much bigger. But because of everyone is talking on the news heavily in Brazil about it, and then people are starting to get a little bit more concerned. So at least there's been a very strong measures in terms of staying at home. You know, artists and public figures start a campaign of staying home, like sharing the information to people, and then pretty much attacking the president. So people stop believing in what he's saying because that's the main problem in Brazil. We have a huge amount of people that believe in what the president says and pretty much think, oh, it's not a big deal. Let's go back to work. Let's go outside. And that's the danger because then people stop isolating and start spreading more the virus. I think that's a good summary of how Brazil is dealing with it right now.
Hmm. How's the atmosphere there? I mean, in terms of the public, are they nervous? Are they cautious? Are they?
I think people are nervous, mostly because of money. I think differently than other countries, especially Europe. Brazil has a huge poor population that live under poverty, that do not have access to any financial support. The government releases an information that informal workers will receive some kind of support, financial means, subsidiary from the government. But to give you an idea, it's going to be, I don't know in euros, but it's going to be around less than $100 that these workers, the informal workers, will receive. And the government the first measurement that the government here did was to help the companies actually, and not the people. So they start creating process that instead of firing workers, the companies can pretty much reduce their like work time and decrease their salaries, but they start being concerned with economy first rather than health.
Mm.
And this is a big thing for Brazil because we have so many people in poverty that whatever happens here really affects these people. Some people are their work. It's important to give them food to survive and to have like a normal life. So a lot of people are anxious and very nervous because of that, because they stopped working and then now they have no way of receiving any kind of funds or money to survive, and that's affecting a lot of families, especially if we think about the favelas in Brazil, the slums here, which are huge. They usually don't have any kind of access to like good information or to even health prevention information. These people are pretty much in really high danger. So I remember Carly was talking about the homeless people. We also have a huge homeless community group of people here in Brazil, and especially in the big cities like Sao Paulo and Rio. And then we're really concerned about them as well. We're pretty much right now, the streets are empty, but these people are there on the street without food, without medication. Some of them probably positive, but they cannot get tested, and they're like spreading to each other. So people are very anxious, but at least I think there's a positive side of that, because then people that are informed are staying at home and are being more careful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully everybody is more cautious because the situation. So now we will sort of mention a little bit of the world development on the pandemic. Alex?
Okay, so as for yesterday, it was announced that we surpassed the 1 million infected worldwide, which raises a lot of questions around how the virus can spread so quickly, and mostly it's been pointing to the Chinese New Year and immigrants trying to get to their homes in mainland China and then coming back and spreading the virus that way, which also makes sense in what Carla was saying about the virus being in Italy even before Wuhan was in quarantine, because the amount of people moving from one place to another for celebrations and events and just to see their family overall. So
Yeah. Another news, which is from America, which is President Donald Trump, according to CNN, has said on Friday his administration has now is now recommending Americans to wear non-medical cloth face coverings, a reversal of previous guidance that suggests masks are unnecessary for people who aren't sick. However, the President Trump himself said, "I don't think I'm going to be using it." He said, going on suggests it was hard to envision such a thing in the Oval Office, wearing a face mask as I greet presidents, prime ministers, dictator, kings, queens. I just don't see it, which is quite odd, exception he made for himself. It's
But
quite
not surprising, I have to say.
yeah, not surprising, but people say be the example of your people. Such things may not be that such as we see last week. Boris Johnson has contacted the coronavirus, and he was seen like we talked about last week. To tell people he don't see the point of not shaking people's hands. He insists on shaking people's hands 2 weeks before he announced he got the virus, and he said he shake every hands in the hospital filled with COVID-19 patients. So I feel like you said, the presidents, Brazil, America, or even UK, they now hopefully they realize the gravity of the situation. But let's see. But in general, do you guys think wearing masks are effective? Do you think the masses should be wearing masks?
Can I just share something before we talk about that, Jerry? I think I've been studying leadership for the last 4 years, both in my undergrad and here in my master's. And I think it's very important for us to, I think, pay attention to what's happening right now. I think we had several examples of bad leadership, especially, I know that a lot of people don't want to talk about politics, but I think political leaders are the ones that have access and make decisions that will impact the whole country. And I think it's a time for us to maybe also find ways to hold these people accountable. For example, Bolsonaro is pretty much telling some people that it's okay to go on the street. So they're sharing misinformation even. I think we had a case recently where the president shared some kind of like a fake video or something, and he had to put the video down, and the video was pretty much telling people that it was okay to go out, and this misinformation and this misspread, or like making the case less dangerous or less important, definitely had affected some people and have influenced some people to go out and pretend that this is a normal thing when it's not. And I think this is, in some stage, this is a kind of a crime and something that is pretty much putting other people's lives in danger or affecting other people. So I just really hope that we come out of this, world crisis thinking and realizing more about the importance of these people, and that also if they commit some kind of mistakes, they had to get accountable. These people are the highest, leadership in the country, and then we allow them to make mistakes that will influence the lives of other people and don't do anything and don't say anything. So I just really hope that we can learn from these bad examples, and how they affect the people's lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Of course.
I do agree. And it's like, of course, like at this point, I think that we can all pretty much agree that this is very serious and that people should not go out, and governments should listen. But at the same time, I feel like in the initial stages, how much do even scientists know about this virus? Because a lot of people in Italy, a lot of epidemiologists, virologists say we don't know the virus. Like, this is a new virus. We have to remember this is a new virus. And I totally agree with the fact that it shouldn't be downplayed. And I've seen a lot of political people, a lot of a lot of even like some doctors that downplayed it at the beginning. And I think that at that point it was because, I mean, I've realized that the virus, I'm like not a virologist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not anything, I'm not, but I've realized that the virus was a serious concern when Wuhan was in lockdown for, personal reasons that I can talk about later maybe. But I just feel like, why did the government not realize, and why some doctor did not realize at that point, but also we don't know. It's just very confused.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's very hard to, at this point, I think we can help people accountable for it, but it's very hard to draw the line on when we can start actually, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that, Carly. But there's some difference as well in terms. I completely get the point that this is something new. We don't know about it, and we are learning how to react. But there are points, for example, we already know the gravity, and we already know. And I'm talking about like as of today.
Yeah.
Brazil already knows the gravity of that. We already have access of the impact in Italy. We already have the access of the impact in China. So it's not something that we can deny, and the government denied even now. My president was saying 4 days ago that this was nothing. So I think in that sense, it's a little bit different. It's not about like, oh, we don't know anything about this virus, so it's okay to go out and go to work. No, there's cases and death in other countries, and it's something that is spreading. It's already a pandemic. We already know it is. So
Yeah.
then there's some responsibility out of that. I completely understand the aspect of not knowing how to do, and like for the last few months we were learning about it, but to have an irresponsible attitude right now to say it's something that's not important when the whole world is being affected, then is a little bit different, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, because we're seeing like for example, the biggest example is probably America, where you see like the president himself, he has this like the doctor, also he has Dr. Fauci, who's in charge uh, of information about the virus and giving advice. Even then, their statements conflicts in each other, contradicts each other. It's very important. These days we need to like make sure the information are factual. Because like you said, these are confusing times. Even like WHO in early January, February, even they weren't sure what's going on. Half of the time, like they only confirm like human to human spread. Like the virus is capable to spread from human to human in January or February. They confirm it pretty late. Politicians' policies does affect people's lives, and
exactly, and I think that's my point in terms of leadership, because whatever is decided in the highest power of the country will affect it down. So let's see the example of South Korea, for example, taking a clear decision that we're going to get tested, and we're going to make sure that all people are being tested, so we know who is positive and like how we can contain and where are the focus of the virus in our country. So that was a top-down decision. So these kind of decisions are very important right now to help countries to deal with the problem, and those decisions are being done right now, and denying that something is happening, it's going to influence and it's going to impact the country and cause more death. So I have a president right now that says like, some people will die, but some people die of other sickness, and some people died of this virus, blah blah blah. That kind of stupidity and that kind of not knowing about the impact of your position in the country, and how that can affect other people's lives. So I think in that sense we have to understand and get these people accountable. Not right now, because that's not the focus, right? Like the focus right now is to deal with the problems, but for sure to have that in mind as well.
Yeah,
I think as well with all this leadership and in relation to the uncertainty of what this virus is, it's also that we don't have examples. I think it was Carly who mentioned it before. We don't know who to follow. So Spain is following Italy. Italy doesn't know who's following, and China has absolutely no one to follow because they were the first ones. And you know, Brazil is following. So it's such a mess that leaders don't even know what policies to implant or not, because not even the WHO knows what they're doing. So it's difficult to go to your population, your citizenship, and being like, oh, you have to do this, this, and this, because maybe those policies don't work because they don't apply to the virus, because we don't know what the virus is. So in relation to the mask, it's difficult to make a decision and to whether tell the people put this mask or put this other mask, because there's thousands of types of masks to wear. And maybe you say, oh, use the I have absolutely no idea about masks, but use the surgical mask, the ones that are only like this, and it's very thin, and then you realize that doesn't really work, so you need to buy another mask, but the country doesn't have those supplies. So it's, I think, a difficult situation in that plays a lot of into the uncertainty and not knowing what this is and what to do and how to act. Because even if you compare it to the SARS, there's a lot of things that don't apply. There's so many things to take into account with a crisis like this, because it's not only, it's what Junior was mentioned before, it's not only the health aspect of it, it's the economical aspect. So of course governments want you to resume your normal life as soon as possible so people can keep producing, keep making money, and keep the economies afloat. So it's such a complicated stuff with a lot of intersecting aspects that it's very difficult to make everything work. So either you balance the economy or you balance the health. But then again, if you choose one over another, there's even more issues. It's very complicated, but of course there's individual actions that we should held accountable. For example, our vice president, his wife had tested positive for coronavirus, and the next day he came into the meeting with the president and the rest of the ministers. So of course it's like, you didn't get tested when your wife is, by the way, you have 2 little kids and you should be in quarantine and you didn't. So of course he should be held accountable because he put a lot of people at risk. And he has to set an example. So it's those little actions and individual actions that should have an effect and should be punished in the end.
Yeah, and I think just to add to what Alejandro was saying, I also understand that I'm not in any way trying to say that everyone has to be punished and they should be doing something good. And I'm not talking about relying on the government, but the case of Brazil, the case of the US are a little bit extreme because of the extreme right governments right now. And then what I'm talking about is like how negative some of this leadership can be, and they are threatening to some lives. They are creating misinformation, or they are creating something. They are affecting the population directly, which is different than the government trying to do something good and making a mistake. I think that's a different point because, again, we don't know. This is an unprecedented time. We don't know how to react. We don't know what to do. Then I don't expect the governments to know the answers. But like when the government already knows some basic information and is not taking that into account and is spreading misinformation, that's a different problem, and it's affecting people's lives. And also, just to talk about the mask that Jerry was asking, so Brazil is now following the WHO latest announcement that they're now saying that it's okay that everyone wear masks, and not only health workers or health professionals. And Brazil started yesterday a kind of like, all in the news, all you hear about was like how to make your homemade mask. So they're sharing like different examples of what kind of material you can use, what kind of masks you can use. There's already like famous bloggers and influencers kind of sharing how they make their mask cute or that kind of stuff. So it became the new thing. Yesterday, everyone was talking about how to make your own mask and how to wash it and what kind of things you can do, so people can start wearing it outside on the streets. And a lot of people are now talking about like the post kind of. Brazil is not in the top of our spread time yet. I think we're gonna get in the next 1 or 2 weeks, but we're already thinking about how we're gonna do after. So how we're gonna prevent other waves of spread, and then people are already thinking about how to use the mask and making mask part of our daily lives. And because we don't have enough for health professionals, we are now migrating into having that idea that we can all create our own masks and like learning how to do it. And it became like a big thing. We were literally talking about it the whole day yesterday.
I think the reason why a lot of cities didn't close down like Wuhan did was for Boris Johnson was we want to delay the lockdown as much as possible just to keep the economy running. And I think that's also what happened with Madrid. Like we were the city with the most infections, but because it is the capital city, and I guess Rome happens the same thing, a lot of people are coming in and out every day from other communities just for work. So if you close down Madrid, you're essentially closing down a lot of people who are just needing to go there to work.
Of course.
So
Rome is different because the Lombardy region was the region where or like the virus developed the most, but that's also the region where there is most activity, like an economic growth, and there are a lot of like industrial estates and So, for example, we've had the problem of this other community that had a lot of cases, but they had a lot of hesitation closing it. Also because there are a lot of factories there. There are a lot of like industrial estates. So, and that's actually the community that is struggling the most, which is the Bergamo community, and no one knows why they delayed the lockdown of that area so long. But they all assume that it was because it's such a powerful area and that locking down would have like impacted the economy really badly, but no, it's all in lockdown anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's very hard, I guess, to just have a good balance. And
you see in every country, the cases, the places that have most cases, a lot of it are big cities. In America, New York has I think 8% of the cases in America. And in UK, London probably have the most cases as well. I suppose like in some of your countries, it will be situations like that, and it's quite like I couldn't imagine how the lockdown in London works. Like it's such a big city, how that works. Like tube, everything just shut down. Yeah, like I don't think even UK currently they're in lockdown, but their level of lockdown is very different from the level of lockdown in Italy or Spain. Because I think in Spain is quite strict, is it?
Yeah, we took the same measures with the fines as Italy did, but I think we have a little bit more of restrictions because the first thing they did is they closed down all universities and all schools and all, whatever. So kids had to stay home, which was a very big mistake because they didn't allow parents to stay home. So they had to stay with their grandparents, which, it's a really big risk to take. They later closed the bars and the clubs because students were going to party instead of staying at their houses, which makes sense because we weren't in full lockdown. And now that we are, because that was on Wednesday, and the day I came here on Saturday, they announced the full lockdown, which meant no one could go to work. No one could go to anywhere except for work, supermarkets or pharmacies, and you had to get a permit, like sign from your boss or your mayor council, the town council, to justify that you're actually going to work. and you had to demonstrate that you're going to the supermarket. So, which is kind of tricky because if you're on your way, if you're coming back from the supermarket, then you just show the bags and that's it. But if you're going there, you have to say like, oh, I live here, and this is my closest supermarket. And now no one can go to work unless your job is essential. So pharmacist or food or supermarkets or policemen or emergency services, and no one can go out for absolutely anything. We don't have the 1 hour exercise that they do on UK.
Yeah.
We can go to walk the dogs, but it's just for a limited amount of time. I'm not sure because I don't own any pets. So I know there's like a limit. I think it's half an hour, but I'm not sure about that. So don't quote me.
So
we have the same, but with the dog, you can just walk around your building.
You cannot go to like parks and stuff like that?
All the parks are closed. So all the parks shut down because people were taking too much advantage of it. So all the parks are like locked off. And people they wanted here to allow kids to go out for an hour a day because it's like the right to play as a kid, like it's a basic right actually, apparently. But after a day they were like, no, of course, because if the kid goes out, then the parent's gonna go with him, and it was just getting tricky. So now you can't even do that. But to be fair, there are a lot, even if you're just walking, there are a lot of people, like there are a lot of checks, like people check on you constantly. Like every time my dad goes out, he gets stopped. And so I guess it's enforced a lot, which gives me hope that people are actually sticking to the regulations. But yeah.
So
here, sorry, I just wanted to add that here, for example, I don't know if it's in other countries, but if you have mental difficulty like autism or Down syndrome, you're allowed to go out for an hour with accompanied by someone. I don't know if that also happens in other countries.
Yeah, like that. What would be for people who have mental problems, mental issues? Do they have like us receive like special assistance? Because being in lockdown, being in quarantine for more than 14 days is a big task for even people who are fine. Like I can't imagine like what kind of like issues of panic attack, anxieties that will give to people. Yeah. What about you, Junior? What is there any proposed policies of lockdown the government has offered, or has anybody said what would be a situation of lockdown in Brazil?
Yeah. So right now because of the political kind of disagreement that Bolsonaro had with the health minister, the state governors and mayors kind of took action before the president, and they decided to do the lockdown. So my city, São Paulo, started the lockdown like 4 days ago. Even though the president was saying, no, don't do lockdown yet because it's going to affect the economy. Bolsonaro pretty much did 5 days ago, did an announcement, a national announcement on television saying, you decide if you do a lockdown, you're going to affect the economy, and then you're going to die of being hungry. Or if you want to continue the economy and continue the country, don't stop the country. Let's go out and continue working, and then some old people might die. That's what he said on national television. But then the governors from each state in Brazil, we have 23 states. They decided that they would not wait for the president to make announcement and just took decisions. And in Brazil, it's slightly different than, for example, the US, where states have a lot of autonomy. In Brazil, the states have to respond to the federal government. So the government has full power. But because it's an emergency, the states would just like, nope, we're going to do this, and they start making their own laws and regulations. So São Paulo is starting in a full lockdown 4 days ago. It's not a really reinforced, as you're saying, Jerry. It's different than China, of course. So we don't have a lot of. If I open the window now, I will see people still on the street. But they are being very flexible and very similar to other countries. So only essential types of jobs are functioning right now. Pharmacies are open, supermarkets, petrol station, gas stations. But you still find it's very difficult. Again, in the case of Brazil, having a lot of informal workers is very difficult for some of them to like literally stop working, because that means that they won't have money to survive. So there are some businesses and some places that you find people like trying to still work and function normally, but like not being completely open. So you have places they were showing yesterday that like some bars are still opening because they still want to try to operate, because if they close down they're going to lose their business and stuff. What we saw is with a lot of businesses kind of learning how to deal with this moment, especially with like restaurants. Right now we're working with like food delivery, so it started like a new business. There's new apps for food delivery right now, just because all the restaurants had to kind of change their way of doing business. But we're following it because it became something more serious and people are seeing more in the news. There are more people also staying at home, but similar with what you're saying as well, Jerry, that especially some people that are part of the elderly community and kind of disagree with what is happening. I just saw yesterday on the news as well, where an elderly person was just going outside without mask or without any protection. And when the news person started talking to her, she said, although I heard the president saying that all people are gonna get it, so I'm gonna get anyway, so it's okay. And she was just walking on the street, and then we don't have any law enforcement to stop people from walking or anything. So then that's gonna happen as well. But the states are like pretty much taking control and encouraging people to stay at home. And there's a very strong like media. Different media campaigns now with artists and people spreading that you should stay at home. So I think people are being more conscious, but we still have cases of people that are either misinformed or just trying to get out as well and breathe. I think it's a very difficult. Probably we are pretty much similar to Italians and Spanish. We like to go out and socialize. Brazilian people love to do that. So it's very difficult for us to not have that chance to go out and to talk to people. And I think culture is like a big part of how we're going to deal with that as well. It's very different in some Asian countries. People are not necessarily going out to socialize as much or don't have the culture of like body contact. In Brazil, we hug and we kiss a lot. So it's kind of like so difficult to pretty much not giving a hug. It's like disrespectful if you don't hug your friend or your family member, But I think it's a moment that we are learning how to change it, to do better for the greater good.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, but like in terms of yourself, everybody here, personally, what's your quarantine experience like? What's like? Are you satisfied, or do you think they could enforce it better? Like, what's your personal situation like, Alex?
So for me, I think I'm quite conflicted because I am thankful that they did it as late as they did, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to come back home. Mm-hmm. But again, I could have just stayed there, and they should have done it before. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other than that, I think it was they did some good things, which was impose the fines, which I think motivated a lot of people not to go out because of I think it's 3,000 euros. I think it's the same in Italy. So I don't know what do you have, Carlene?
I think it's 3,000 euros.
Yeah. So I think that helped a lot to make people stay in. I also think that having policemen walking around the neighborhood all the time also helps getting people, getting people in. A lot of campaigns like we have a hashtag that is "I'm staying home," but in Spanish, obviously, and a lot of people like blasting slogans of "Stay at home" when they see people walking down the street. I think that helps. Seeing other people staying in helps a lot. As in a personal level, I'm fine because I'm used to not going out anymore. So in my neighborhood, it's very quiet either way. So I'm not really noticing the difference. But I know I have friends in the city center that are very scared because it's weird to see Madrid empty. It's very strange. But yeah, other than that, I think for now it's good. They just have to figure out a way of making this last and not make us, sorry, censor me later, fuck up after we can go out, because I think that's going to be where the most danger is going to be, because people are going to go out in thousands, in hundreds at one time, and that's going to be bad, because a lot of people are going to get infected and we're just going to go back again. I think that's going to be the challenge that we're going to have to face, and I'm looking forward seeing how this government deals with it, because they're not doing a good job. So
yeah. What about you, Carly? What's your personal?
I mean, I don't know. So I personally think it could have been done earlier, because so basically, as I told you before, like I was aware of the virus early on because I have a good friend who is from Hubei province. So he took when he got locked down, I started getting very worried, and it was really weird around me because I saw people getting ill and not, practicing good coughing etiquette, or like people, being very like, I don't know, like I would get very scared. So as soon as my friend told me like buy face mask, I was like, he's being extreme, but because I didn't know that this would happen. So he was like, don't go out, be wear face masks, buy everything. And I was like, okay. So I kind of started implementing that, and people were like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, sorry. Like, why are you doing that? That's so weird. And like my mom got sick, for example, after traveling to the area that it's now doomed as like the worst affected area, for example. And she had exactly the same symptoms as coronavirus, but because it was before the emergency, like she just, assumed it was what it is. And maybe it was, but we'll never know, because it's like, so what I'm saying is that, of course, it could have been implemented earlier by everyone, because if the situation got so bad in China, it's not like we couldn't have predicted that it would have gotten bad everywhere, especially because we're so interconnected and we all like know people from all over the country. And if I know someone from Hubei, then like how many other people know someone from Hubei without even knowing, like without even realizing, you know what I mean? So, and especially because now they're saying that the virus was in Italy in second week of January. So like, so that's, in terms of like lockdown, I think it's the government's been dealing with it even like, I guess, even a bit better than what I thought it would, honestly. I'm not hating on the government, even though like I'm not like, I've never been like a fan of the government, because there have been a lot of political crises in Italy prior to this. But I think I was actually surprised. I think since we're the first, it's such a new scenario that everyone would struggle, like we're just struggling. And so it's worth to respect and say, okay, this is as much as they can do. just because I know that, like, I guess, like, from what I get, like, they're working hard on it. Of course, the economical support could be a lot better. And, if that can be reached, that will be good. If not, I don't know what will happen. Probably not a good thing. Europe, I don't think Europe, like, I'm a Europe supporter. Like, I always loved Europe. I could study in the UK because of Europe, but I think right now Europe is not doing enough, no, like for Italy nor for Spain, because like as the most affected countries, we're not getting the support that we need personally. But I don't know. And yeah, in terms of lockdown, it's just okay. Like I was actually more stressed before we were in lockdown because I was seeing all like the people suffering and all my friends being like, stay at home. So now that I'm in lockdown, I'm like, okay, nothing bad can happen anymore in a way.
Yeah, it gives
So,
you
yeah.
that feeling of security at least. Makes you at least it's under
Well,
containment. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, another thing that I want to say that I'm not happy with is the way that so basically I don't think that they're doing enough checks and enough swabs. That is that again? Yeah. Like medical swabs, like to test things. Yeah. So with us, what happened to me was that this virus is weird because from personal experience, what happened to my dad is that he came in contact with someone who tested positive. And they told us he found out 13 days after he'd come in contact with him. So like, first of all, my dad basically was meant to do quarantine, but he only found out 14 days after, which was weird, and he never got tested. And so this guy was a doctor, so he should have gotten tested. And I guess that like we should have gotten tested maybe, even though it was asymptomatic, because like he did not get sick, but I did in that period of time.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It's very confusing. Like it's not being as they're not doing as mass testing as I'd like it to be. But then it's very hard because if it's like the incubation period is 13 days for this virus, then my dad spent his 13 days without even knowing that he was like in incubation. I've heard on the news that this doctor who was curing my dad tested positive. And they just told him, if you have symptoms, let us know. But I don't think that they impose quarantines on his patients.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very like, this happened the day before lockdown, so the next day everyone was in quarantine anyways.
Yeah.
But you can still go out, you can still go to the supermarket. And luckily, like, I don't think that my dad was positive or anything, or like asymptomatic, because all of us were asymptomatic and whatever. But in case you're positive, I guess you quarantine with it's very unclear. Like, we don't have the facilities to say, okay, you like, if you're not positive, then you have to quarantine at home, which I'm not, really happy about, because you could quarantine in a hotel. Like, the hotels are not, they're not working, so why not? But also, like, from like an hotel perspective, my mom works in a hotel, and if you want to be a quarantine facility, they pay you like a misery, and you have to provide a huge service. So that's why a lot of hotels are not doing it, and that's why a lot of hotels, unless they're forced to by the government, will not implement the service. So I guess it's very hard. It's just not, because family could potentially be like a cluster of infection, especially if you're not isolated.
What do you see? What's your plan after quarantine? Hopefully for everybody here. for jobs, for work, for study?
I honestly don't think I'm gonna go back anytime soon. So as soon as the airports open up, which I guess will be late July, August, because I think the UK is gonna be, it's gonna take more time for the UK to open borders than for Italy or Spain, or China, of course. Yeah, because we started before all this process. So as soon as it opens, I'll have to go back, and I'm moving out in August, so I'll have to get all my stuff together, move to the other apartment, and then I'll come back to Spain for the rest of August and September, and just go back for uni. But I don't think it's gonna open anytime soon, so I'm just gonna stay here for the moment, and if I need to, I'll just freelance for whatever magazine or publication that I can find.
What about you, Carly?
So I have a similar situation. I moved back here to do an internship after finishing my master's in London. I was about actually to go back to London in June because I need to graduate. So, but that's been cancelled, so that's not going to happen. And also, I have this problem where I'm applying for my settle status because I've been to the UK. I've been in the UK for 5 years. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, 5 years. So it's gonna be 5 years in September. And but then I have this problem that although I pay taxes for like an apartment in London, I'm not living there. So I don't know if I'll even get my settled status now. Because although like I have a contract and everything, I'm currently here. So the situation is a bit tricky. And I've always like my problem is that now I want a job, like I want my first, full-time job after uni and everything. And like I've always thought I'll apply everywhere, like anywhere like that I get a job, I'll just be there. And of course, like having this advantage to I've lived in the UK for so long, like I wanted to use this settled status opportunity, but of course I was also doing an internship here and whatever. But now like I can't even think in that like global mentality, which is a bit scary. And I don't know if like you guys can relate, but it's really scary because like of course Italy's not the most wealthy, and there's not a lot of jobs, especially for young people. So like it's always been really good to be able to look at other countries for it, but like the idea of like it being restricted, and Brexit was already like a big challenge, but this is even a bigger challenge. And I know that Europe is doing something about it, so that they wanted to open a scheme so that European countries could exchange like young workforce, but I'm not sure about that. So yeah, that's the idea, but
yeah, it's
so very hard. It's very uncertain.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. What about you, Junior?
Yeah, for me as well. I was supposed to have a graduation in May. My family was coming to the US, so it's all canceled. So no graduation. I still have one online class to do, and I have to finish my thesis. Hopefully, if I can finish, because it's kind of like on pause for 3 weeks. But I have to finish by May. Then I can graduate and get my diploma, and maybe have a proper graduation next year with next year's class. We don't know yet. I also was looking for jobs in the US, because if you finish a degree in the US, you can stay for work for a year. I had a job offer already that I don't know if it's going to stand. I applied for my OPT, which is this working visa in the US, and I might be coming back if other job opportunities appear or something like that. But at the same time, being from a low-class family, I need to work. There's no way I can stay here back home without jobs, without working. So I'm going to be looking for a job here for the time being. And It's a bit stressful as well because I think we are all coming from a master's degree kind of perspective, and then we're like, we study so hard and we are like waiting for the next step in our career, and then we have this unprecedented times that we pretty much have no jobs available and don't know how to navigate. And I think that's very stressful because we don't want to land on a job just because we need a job and because there's not many opportunities, and then getting that job that is not exactly what you're looking for or that you were preparing and like investing your time and your education and your money to have access to. So it's a bit, stressful. But I think at the same time, we're gonna find new ways to reinvent ourselves and discover new things that we could do that without this whole thing we wouldn't be able to. So I'm looking into. I understand the negative aspect of that. I'm not being like, oh, everything is gonna be alright. No, I don't bring that fake hope. But I also think there's gonna be some positive aspect in the end of the world, and also to be able to find resilience in the middle of this mess, to be able that we were the generation that were in the middle of the coronavirus, and we will be able to share about that in the future and say how we found resilience to continue our lives and to find jobs and to continue studying. I think that's going to be very important for the future as well.
But like, how do you guys see life, or like sort of like, for instance, there's a lot of like work from home things happening these days. Do you think that's gonna fundamentally change how the job market or industry for you guys in the future? Maybe some jobs they may say you have to come into work in the future, and they realize, oh, nowadays you can just work from home. Is that gonna change your work aspect, work prospect? Yeah.
To be honest, for better or for worse, I don't think a lot is gonna change. I think work, it's just gonna be the same. I don't think businesses are gonna change the way they operate and send people to work from home, or the other way around, just send people to an office. But I do hope that governments and businesses as well get a plan B, just so everyone's prepared in case this happens again. But I don't think there's going to be an immediate change. I don't think this is going to mean that, I don't know, every journalist is going to have to work from home. I don't think, because just because you can do it doesn't mean it's the best way.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of people who have to work from home, but yeah, my mom, for example, she works in a store. She can do stuff at home, but of course that doesn't mean that the business is going to be like, oh, just because you can just do it. No, because it's better for them just to have you at the office so they can look at you, control you, make sure you're doing your work. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of change, to be honest, after this.
I want to thank everybody for coming today. It's a great show we did today. I think it's really good. It's a good learning everybody's situation in different countries. I wanted to do this show to remind everybody we're all in this together. This is a very confusing time for everybody, especially for us young people. It's our life has just started, and we just like you said, Junior. We just this will be something interesting to tell in the future. We are quarantines basically, which is yeah. Maybe we can do a show in the future, just quarantines, just living through the times of Conora. Yeah, it's we all have to try to be optimistic, with the cautious but optimistic, or else it's gonna be a quarantine is not easy. It's a very dry situation. So I'm glad we all, at least trying to be optimistic. We have our families here, so hopefully we can appreciate things we have right now. So I guess that's it. Thank you everybody for coming today. We have social media account on Twitter, and we also have a website where we post blog posts, articles, stuff like that. We do our show every Saturday. If you have any questions or you want to suggest anything we should discuss, remind me what's the email address again?
Oh, it's QuaranTK. So that's QUARANTK@gmail.com.
And I think our next week topic will be entertainment. Is that it, Alex?
I think so. Yeah, that's what we have programmed for the moment.
Yes.
So unless something more pressing comes up, we'll talk about entertainment industry.
Yeah, because like we see films, a lot of things has been delayed for this. That'll be a very different discussion from today's. But I really appreciate everybody's input today. I'm so glad to hear everybody is currently at least safe. Mentally, physically doing well. So for me, I will be signing off from Taipei. Alex.
I'm from Spain, in Madrid. Yeah.
Carly.
Yeah, bye from Rome. Have a good whatever time zone you're in at the moment.
Julia?
Yes, thank you very much, Jerry, for the invitation. Thank you, Alex and Carly, for the company. It was great talking to all of you about this topic, and saying bye from Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening.